The Man of Tomorrow, the Man of Steel, Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman. For over 70 years, no one has had an on-screen career quite like the last son of Krypton. From soaring highs to valley lows, from planet spinning to neck snapping, he's done it all. Hi, I'm Mason from What the Blue, and in celebration of the release of the new Superman movie, I'm going to be ranking the live-action Superman movies. But first, a few ground rules. As I mentioned, I'm only going to be ranking the live-action Superman films. As much as I love some of the animated movies, if I included them, I'd be here all day. I'm also not including the film serials from the 40s, as those don't technically count as movies. Lastly, in an attempt to level the playing field, I'm only including the director's cuts of all the movies that have them, as that was what was available for me to watch for this list. With that out of the way, let's begin. Number 9. Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. I have a certain affinity for bad movies. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about a team of writers, directors, set designers, cameramen, costume designers, and of course actors putting their heart and soul into a film that completely fails that's intriguing to me. If we didn't have bad movies, we wouldn't have a basis for what makes great movies great. And for that, I believe bad movies will always have a place in the world. Which is why I don't say what I'm about to say lightly. Superman 4: The Quest for Peace is a film that should not exist. Why do I say this? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the film itself, don't worry, we will get to that, but more to do with the circumstances surrounding its release and why it was released in the first place. You see, the only reason Superman 4: The Quest for Peace saw the light of day was to keep its production company afloat. That company is Cannon Films, a Ponzi scheme disguised as a production company. Cannon Films' business model was to sell the distribution rights to their films, usually to foreign companies, and then use that money to finance the film. I may not know much about film financing, but even I can see how shady this is. As for the movie itself, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace is almost impressively bad. During a period of global conflict, Superman takes it upon himself to rid the world of all nuclear weapons. Yes, it's just as brainless as it sounds. In retaliation, Lex Luthor, sprung from the world's worst prison, creates Nuclear Man, a Chippendale dancer dressed in a threatening outfit? I don't know, none of this really matters. The plot is thinner than motel toilet paper, with enough loose plot threads to make its own Superman suit out of. On top of this, I've seen student films with better effects, and most of the cast is sleepwalking. The only positive in this movie is Christopher Reeve's Superman. Even in bad movies, he never half-asses his performances. Unless you're a masochist, skip this film if you know what's good for you. Number 8. Superman 3. We go from a movie that shouldn't have released to a movie that isn't a Superman movie. That's great. After the relative success of Superman 2, the producers decided to double down on Richard Donner's replacement director, Richard Jennings, which led to a more comedic angle and the casting of the reason why this isn't a Superman movie, Richard Pryor. Now look, I don't have a problem with a Superman movie with a comic relief character. The problem comes when you cut down the Superman stuff and focus mainly on the comic relief. The worst part? He's not even funny. I'll admit, I'm not familiar with Pryor's work, but every time I see him on screen in this movie, I feel like Michael Bay on the set of Transformers: I Know What You Did Last Night, yelling at TJ Miller like, "Why aren't you funny? We hired you to be funny and you can't even do that. You're not even making the Make-A-Wish kids laugh. What are you doing?" Sorry, weren't there other characters in this movie? Oh yeah, 3 completely boring versions of the villains from the first movie. They're not even worth another sentence. There's also the replacement love interest, Lana Lang. She's about as three-dimensional and interesting as a piece of cardboard. Which is also what I can say about the plot, which centers around Colombian coffee crops and computer science. How exciting. The biggest sin of this movie is how boring it is. Superman 4 was bad, but it was at least a memorable type of bad. I genuinely can't remember anything about any of the characters that aren't Superman in Superman 3. Even the best stuff in it, like Superman slowly turning evil and having to fight himself to restore his morality, or the final fight with the supercomputer, they're both fine, but they're so surface level they don't amount to anything. Overall, Superman 3 is a super snoozer of a film. Watch the fight scene in the junkyard on YouTube and leave the rest of this movie in the phantom zone of your memory. Number 7. Superman and the Mole Men. When I originally decided to make this list, I wasn't going to include Superman and the Mole Men for 2 reasons. One, it came out in the 50s, a time that I don't acknowledge when it comes to movies. And 2, it's not even an hour long, so it barely counts as a movie. For me, at least. But when I found it on Internet Archive, I decided to give it a shot, and man, I tried so hard to grade this on a curve. This movie's older than both of my parents, for crying out loud, but Superman and the Mole Men is so boring. The movie centers around Clark Kent and Lois Lane investigating the deepest well in the world, which happened to breach the home of a race of subterranean mole-like creatures that threaten the nearby town. Despite only being 58 minutes long, this movie moves at a damn snail's pace. So much of this movie is focused on the town's reaction to the Mole Men that half the time I forgot it was a Superman movie. The only positive is George Reeves' Superman, who's the perfect blend of imposing and authoritative. He may not be on screen very long, but he makes every scene count. I may not be a fan of his Clark Kent. He's a bit too confident and headstrong for my taste. He acts more like a TV detective than a mild-mannered reporter. But his Superman is spot on. If you're interested in what Superman was like in the 50s, give it a shot, but otherwise, I would skip over this film in a single bound. Number 6. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. I have a confession to make. Despite putting it far down on this list, I kind of have a soft spot for this movie. This was both the first Superman and the first Batman movie I ever saw in theaters, and let me tell you, I was the perfect age for it. When you watch Batman v Superman at 13, you don't care about the extremely convoluted plot, the miscasted villain, or the complete and total misunderstanding of the title characters. It's just a cool movie with cool action scenes. Sadly, revisiting the film 9 years later, it's much harder to look over those things. That's not to say the movie's totally awful, per se. I still enjoy the action set pieces quite a bit, especially the Batmobile chase and the warehouse scene. Both of them bring me right back into that 13-year-old mindset. And I still think Ben Affleck was a great choice for Batman, but so much of this movie completely forgets what makes both Batman and Superman great characters, which is a shame because this was the first time they both shared the big screen. It should have been a slam dunk. What we got instead was a melodramatic, convoluted mess of a film. And it was only the second in the Snyderverse. Number 5. Superman Returns. Want to hear something nobody's ever said before? Superman Returns used to be my favorite Superman movie. Before the newest Superman released this year, I had an idea in my head of what I thought Superman movies should be like. An idea that was mostly based on the movie from 1978. Superman Returns is a lot like that movie, but it's only from 19 years ago instead of 47, so in my mind, that made it the best Superman movie. On my most recent rewatch, however, not only has 2025's Superman completely changed what I think a Superman movie should be, it also made me rethink why I love this movie so much. A lot of what makes this movie great comes from the films that came before it. Brandon Routh and Kevin Spacey were very clearly casted because of their resemblance to the stars of the first Superman movie, and they both channel their performances well, but they never surpass them. The same can be said for the plot as well, which very much takes from the first movie down to copying lines from it.
They shouldn't smoke the thing.
They can be a great people color than we should be.
I certainly hope this little incident hasn't put you off flying.
As you are flying.
Statistically speaking, still the safest way to travel.
Superman Returns is definitely held up by these moments that recall the original films, though, as everything original it adds is so surface level it barely makes an impact. Kate Bosworth is there as Lois Lane. James Marsden fulfills his role as the other guy well. There's a kid they do nothing with, that's something, right? Overall, there's enough stuff here carried over from the past good Superman films that I don't hate it. Hell, it still has my favorite on-screen Superman suit. But Superman Returns never does anything to soar up and away past the films that preceded it. Number 4. Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's DC Extended Universe was, I'm gonna be nice and say controversial, and that controversy started right at the beginning with Man of Steel. When this movie released 12 years ago, everybody either loved it or hated it. 12 years later, I'm somewhere in the middle. Let's talk about what works first. The casting in this movie is spot on. Henry Cavill was an inspired choice to play Superman. He's the first actor since Christopher Reeves to really feel like he embodies the character. Physically, at least. Amy Adams is pitch perfect as a confident and ambitious Lois Lane. Michael Shannon always hams it up as General Zod to a perfect degree. Diane Lane and Kevin Costner are great as the Kents, even if John Kent isn't written the best. Even Russell Crowe, who I don't generally like, works really well as Jor-El. The action is also fantastic in this movie. Zack Snyder really has a good eye for compelling action scenes. Now let's talk about what doesn't work. As I mentioned earlier, John Kent is written horribly. The decision to basically give him the opposite of the great power, great responsibility speech was stupid. Superman doesn't seem to care much about the destruction he causes, which may lead to some awesome visuals, but also raises some moral concerns. Lastly, the plot seems to exist just as an excuse to get from one action scene to the next. The pacing is also pretty weird, focusing on things we don't really need focused on. Apart from those minor problems, however, 12 years later, Man of Steel is still a solid time. Number 3. Superman the Movie. Here it is, the one that started superhero movies as we know them, the film that made you believe a man can fly. It's pretty crazy to see that nearly 50 years later, Superman still stands out as a high point among the genre it basically created. There's many reasons this movie holds up so well. The cast is one of them. Christopher Reeves looks like he was born to play Superman. Gene Hackman is perfectly cartoonish as Lex Luthor. Margot Kidder's Lois Lane is a perfect blend of hard-nosed and witty, and Marlon Brando kills as Jor-El. The effects also hold up pretty well too. You can tell they spent a long time perfecting Superman's flying effects. The plot is also a ton of fun, and for a movie from the 70s, it's paced really well. There's never a dull moment. What else can I say about this movie that hasn't been said already? It's an epically fun blast that may not be without its cheesy moments. God, that poem still makes me cringe, but it's still a great time all these years later. Number 2. Superman 2: The Donner Cut. For whatever reason, in their infinite wisdom, Warner Home Media has decided that the Donner Cut is the only version of Superman 2 that should be included in every compilation of Superman movies. I don't mind that, but the option would have been nice. I honestly tried to look at this as just another version of Superman 2, but cutting down on the goofy nature that came with the replacement director and elevating the things that made the film great to begin with makes Superman 2 the Richard Donner cut not only better than the original version, but better than the first Superman movie in my opinion. It mostly comes down to Superman and Lois's relationship for me. Watching Superman struggle to choose between the woman he loves and being Superman is amazingly intriguing. The villains are also pretty great too. Terrence Stamp is fantastic as General Zod, acting pretty much exactly what an alien who believes he rightfully deserves to rule Earth should act like.
Kneel before Zod!
And Ursa also gets some great moments too. The brilliantly fun action scenes, the deepening of Superman's relationship with his birth father. Man, if I sat here and described everything I love about the Donner Cut, I'd be here forever. It's the ultimate version of the ultimate superhero sequel, and you should absolutely check it out. Number 1. Superman 2025. Yes, at number 1 on my list, I've placed James Gunn's Superman. Call it recency bias, call me a James Gunn glazer, which would be funny because it's not necessarily true. I do not care. Superman 2025 showcases an understanding of not just Superman, but comic books as a whole that I've never seen before on the big screen. Superhero movies prior felt more and more separated from the comics that inspired them, but not this one. It feels fresh off the page, especially when it comes to the title character. What I love the most about David Cornsweet's version of Superman is that he has an obsession, basically, with doing the most good, which is not only a great personality trait for Superman to have, but is also where most of his personal conflict comes from in this movie, which is incredibly interesting to me. The rest of the cast kills it too. Nicholas Hoult absolutely sells it as someone with an almost cartoonish level of hatred for Superman. Rachel Brosnan rivals Margot Kidder as my favorite big screen version of Lois Lane. Even Jimmy Olsen is fun to watch. We haven't gotten a good version of him on screen since the Reeves movies. Nathan Fillion and Isabella Merced are perfectly cast as Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl, but Eddie Gathegi absolutely steals the show as Mr. Terrific in every scene he's in. That was a fun surprise. Outside of the cast, the action scenes are a blast. Man of Steel had some stellar action scenes to be sure, but none of them were ever as fun as Superman 2025's fight scenes. The score is incredible. I love the use of guitars in the score. There's so much good stuff in this movie, and honestly, I could keep going, but we would be here forever. Get yourself a ticket, go to the theater, and watch this movie. You might just find yourself up and away into a good time. Anyways, that's been my top 5 Superman movies list. Here's my Letterboxd list of all of them, including the theatrical cut of Superman 2. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe for more fun stuff from the three of us. It really means a ton. Thank you all for watching, and good night.